At the onset of World War II, Germany's naval strategy was largely shaped by the limitations imposed by the Treaty of Versailles and the ambitions of Adolf Hitler's regime. Unlike the Allied powers, which relied heavily on naval superiority and aircraft carriers, Nazi Germany focused on a combination of U-boats, submarines, surface raiders, and battleships to disrupt enemy supply lines and assert dominance in the Atlantic. The Kriegsmarine, under Grand Admiral Erich Raeder, envisioned a powerful fleet that could challenge the British Royal Navy. But Germany lacked the industrial and logistical capabilities to sustain a full-scale naval arms race. Instead of prioritizing aircraft carriers, Germany relied on submarine warfare and commerce raiding, believing that these tactics would be more effective against the superior British fleet. Recognizing the strategic advantage of aircraft carriers, Adolf Hitler ordered the construction of Germany's first aircraft carrier, the Graf Zeppelin, in 1935 as part of the Kriegsmarine's expansion efforts. The carrier was designed to be a formidable warship, with an estimated displacement of 33,550 tons, and capable of carrying approximately 42 aircraft, including fighter planes and dive bombers. The armament was designed to include 16 150mm guns, 12 105mm dual-purpose guns, and a complement of anti-aircraft defenses. When compared to its counterparts in the British and American navies, the Graf Zeppelin was relatively small and less technologically advanced. The Royal Navy's aircraft carriers, such as HMS Ark Royal, could carry over 60 aircraft, while the United States Navy's Essex-class carriers could accommodate more than 90 planes. Germany also lacked experience in carrier-based aircraft operations, which placed the Graf Zeppelin at a severe disadvantage. The Graf Zeppelin was laid down in 1936, but its construction was plagued by numerous delays and setbacks. Germany's shifting military priorities constantly interrupted progress, as the emphasis on land warfare and submarine development took precedence over carrier construction. Although the Kriegsmarine had ambitious plans for a carrier-capable fleet, these ambitions were never fully realized due to bureaucratic conflicts, technical challenges, and resource shortages. One of the most significant obstacles was Germany's lack of expertise in aircraft carrier design. Unlike the United States and Japan, which had developed extensive experience in carrier operations, Germany had never operated a carrier before and lacked the necessary doctrine, trained personnel, and aircraft designs to support such a vessel. As a result, modifications and redesigns were frequently made, further delaying the project. Hitler's vision for the German Navy was deeply influenced by traditional battleship doctrine rather than modern carrier warfare. He and Grand Admiral Erich Raeder prioritized the construction of massive battleships, such as the Bismarck and Tirpitz, believing that these heavily armed warships would be more effective in challenging the British Royal Navy. This mindset significantly delayed the development of aircraft carriers, as Germany continued to invest heavily in surface raiders and U-boats instead. A major factor in this strategic miscalculation was the Z Plan, a naval expansion strategy introduced in 1939, which aimed to build a fleet capable of challenging Britain's naval supremacy by 1945. The plan allocated resources toward battleships, submarines, and cruisers, while the development of aircraft carriers remained a lower priority. However, when Germany invaded Poland in 1939, the war escalated far earlier than anticipated, and the Kriegsmarine found itself unprepared for prolonged naval warfare against the British and American fleets. One of the biggest challenges Germany faced in its attempt to build an aircraft carrier was industrial and resource limitations. The construction of the Graf Zeppelin required large quantities of steel, advanced shipyard facilities, and specialized aircraft, all of which were in high demand for other military projects. With Germany's economy heavily focused on land warfare and blitzkrieg tactics, resources were diverted toward the production of tanks, submarines, and aircraft for the Luftwaffe rather than naval assets. Additionally, Germany's war effort was severely impacted by Allied naval blockades and strategic bombing campaigns. The Royal Air Force and United States Army Air Forces targeted German shipyards and industrial centers, further delaying the completion of the Graf Zeppelin and other naval projects. Aircraft carrier operations also required a well-trained air wing and carrier-capable planes, which Germany lacked. Unlike the United States, which had developed specialized naval aircraft, such as the Grumman F-6F Hellcat, Germany had no dedicated carrier-based planes, making it even more difficult to integrate air power into its navy. One of the most significant obstacles to Germany's aircraft carrier ambitions was the lack of a dedicated naval air doctrine and carrier-capable aircraft. Unlike the United States and Japan, which had established strong traditions of carrier aviation, Germany had never developed a specialized naval air branch. Instead, all air power was centralized under the Luftwaffe, commanded by Hermann Göring, who was unwilling to allocate resources or pilots to support the Kriegsmarine's aircraft carrier project. Göring saw the Luftwaffe as the dominant force in aerial warfare and had little interest in developing a separate naval aviation component. As a result, Germany did not design or produce carrier-capable aircraft that could effectively operate from the Graf Zeppelin. The United States had aircraft such as the Grumman F-6F Hellcat, and Japan had the Mitsubishi A-6M0, both of which were specifically designed for aircraft carrier operations. In contrast, Germany attempted to modify land-based aircraft, such as the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and Junkers Ju-87 Stuka, for carrier use. But these modifications proved problematic. Carrier-based aircraft required reinforced landing gear, tailhooks for arrestor cables, and folding wings for storage, all of which Germany struggled to implement. Additionally, training pilots for carrier landings presented another challenge. Landing on the short deck of an aircraft carrier required extensive training and experience, which German pilots lacked. Countries like the United States and Japan invested years into developing specialized naval pilots, while Germany's pilots were trained almost exclusively for land-based operations. Without a structured training program for carrier aviation, the Kriegsmarine would have faced severe operational challenges even if the Graf Zeppelin had been completed. Göring's reluctance to share air power with the Navy further exacerbated the issue. He viewed the Kriegsmarine's request for a dedicated air wing as an unnecessary division of resources and refused to cede control over any portion of the German Air Force. This inter-service rivalry between the Luftwaffe and Kriegsmarine was a key reason why Germany never developed a functional carrier air group, effectively rendering the Graf Zeppelin useless as a combat vessel. Despite all the setbacks, the Graf Zeppelin was nearly completed in 1943, with construction reaching approximately 85 to 95% completion. However, by this point in the war, Hitler's strategic priorities had shifted. The Battle of the Atlantic was largely being fought with U-boats rather than surface ships, and the growing effectiveness of Allied air superiority made a single German aircraft carrier seem insignificant. In addition, the Eastern Front required vast amounts of resources and manpower, leading to further delays and a lack of urgency to complete the carrier. In 1943, Hitler officially halted work on the Graf Zeppelin, deciding that the effort required to complete and deploy the ship was no longer justifiable. The nearly finished carrier was moved to Stettin, modern-day Szczecin, Poland, where it remained unused for the rest of the war. In 1945, as Soviet forces advanced into Germany, the Kriegsmarine scuttled the ship to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. However, the Soviets raised the Graf Zeppelin in 1946, intending to study its design. After some initial examinations, the ship was ultimately used for target practice and sunk in post-war naval testing. Germany's failure to deploy an aircraft carrier was the result of poor naval strategy, resource limitations, and inter-service conflicts. While other major powers, such as the United States, Britain, and Japan, recognized the strategic value of aircraft carriers, Germany remained fixated on battleships and U-boats, missing the opportunity to develop a strong carrier force. The lack of carrier aircraft, trained pilots, and a dedicated naval air doctrine further crippled the program, ensuring that the Graf Zeppelin would never see combat. The absence of an aircraft carrier had a profound impact on Germany's naval effectiveness in World War II. Without carrier-based air power, the Kriegsmarine was unable to project force across the Atlantic or counter Allied naval forces effectively. Germany's reliance on U-boats and surface raiders proved insufficient against the overwhelming naval and air superiority of the Allies, particularly as the United States entered the war and expanded its fleet of aircraft carriers. Could an operational aircraft carrier have changed the outcome of World War II? Unlikely. By the time Germany could have fielded a fully functional carrier, the Allies had already established dominance in both the Atlantic and the Pacific. Additionally, a single carrier, without sufficient escort ships, trained pilots, or air support, would have been highly vulnerable to Allied attacks. While it may have allowed Germany to launch more effective naval operations, it is doubtful that it would have been enough to alter the course of the war. Ultimately, Germany's missed opportunity to integrate carriers into its naval strategy was a major weakness, further ensuring the downfall of the Kriegsmarine and the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany.